All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our 7th 30-minute Lunchtime Boost. We hope these have been a real bright spot in your day. Every Wednesday and Friday, we're bringing you experts from our local community. I'm your host, Jen Maceda, the CEO of She's Local, the organization that brings you accessible, relevant, and relatable local conferences. And now, digital live engagement opportunities for local women to connect, inspire, and move along whatever path you choose. On today's Boost, we are talking about how to sustain and build relationships during quarantine and social distancing. And joining us is our Boost expert. She's a clinical psychologist, Dr. Susan Trotter. Susan has over 20 years of experience and helps people achieve greater joy, satisfaction, and success in their relationships in her work as a relationship coach with specialties in divorce, dating, relationships, self-confidence, mindset, and communication. She's also on the leadership team for Vesta and a community leader with Pepper Lane. Thank you for joining us, Susan.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
It's such a pleasure. You're a rock star, so thank you for your time. I want to get started by asking you to explain why relationships are so important right now.
Sure, it's such a great question. We're in such uncertain times, and certainly a situation that we've never been in before, and we're cut off from a lot of the people that we usually see or connect with on a regular basis. And in a lot of ways, I hear so much about the ups and downs, all the different emotions that people are experiencing. And in a lot of ways, it can be helpful to think about it as grief, that we're all just struggling with all the losses that are inherent in this situation. Perhaps one of the biggest losses has to do with our connections with people that we have in normal circumstances. And so it becomes even more important to think about how we can connect with people, friends and family and coworkers, and also work on our relationships that we do have, that we're people that we're with now, in order to help us manage all the other losses that we're experiencing.
There are so many different types of relationships: friendships, marriage, parents, siblings. What are the most important relationships right now to sustain? And is there some that are more important than others?
Well, I think everybody's situation is unique. And so I am hearing from a lot of people who are single and feeling very lonely in their own isolation and trying to figure out how to date. And so for those people, figuring out how to date, if that's what they want to do, is really important. And also making sure that they're staying connected with other people through other avenues, like texting and calling and video and planning virtual activities and so forth. I have a Zoom jewelry party I'm doing with some friends this evening as a way to connect. For people who are couples at home, whether they have kids or not, that relationship is so important. And I know how stressed everybody is being at home, being together 24/7, trying to balance working, and if you have children, homeschooling. It is a lot to manage. And I think it's really important for people to be compassionate with themselves and the people around them, to pay attention to their mindset and really assume that most of us are doing the best that we can. And I think for couples who are at home together, really trying to look at how they can use this time to actually strengthen their relationship, as opposed to letting the stress of it all hurt it in different ways. And we can chat about some strategies for that today as well.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. I think that's a great first strategy, just to be compassionate with yourself and be compassionate with those that you're living with or that you want to maintain connections with. What are some other strategies, please?
Sure. First of all, I think it's really important for people to respect each other's time and space. Even though we might be home together all the time, we still may need to have some time alone and need space away from other people in our family. And so sitting down and trying to figure, what makes sense for you, and everybody has different needs for that. So just understanding and being able to communicate your own needs around that, and then really hearing what the other people in your family might need as well. I think for couples, it's also really important to find dedicated time to focus on the relationship. You're together all the time, but you may not be focused on the relationship. You may be, one's working, one's homeschooling, one's cooking, there's the endless dishes and all of that. So I'm talking about planning dates, planning time to just actually sit and talk with each other. That talking is part of what can help you actually strengthen the connection. And I tell this to single people who are dating also, that this time of social distancing, I think actually provides an opportunity for singles to set themselves up for even more success in relationships, because it forces us to get back to some more kind of old-fashioned courtship rituals where people actually just simply talk and get to know each other on a deeper level, and it slows the process down. And I think couples who are together can also borrow from that same idea, really using this time to slow down and just talk and get to know each other in a new and different way than perhaps they did before.
What are some of the different ways? You talk about reverting back to ways of courting, but also in communication. We've been writing letters to my parents, or my kids have, encouraging that level of communication. And I feel as though we're almost learning more about each other through those letters. What are some other ways?
Sure, absolutely. I love the idea of letters. Nobody writes letters anymore, so I think it's fantastic that your kids are doing that. Everybody's on Zoom now or FaceTime, so finding ways and planning as many of those kinds of activities as you can. Again, planning virtual activities that you can do with people who aren't maybe in your home. I know people who are doing virtual walks with others, different classes that you can do together. I think finding as many different ways as you can to reach out and connect with people is important. And at the same time, I also know people are zoomed out. And so sometimes it's also important to recognize when you need a break from all of that. And that's okay too. Again, it's really about recognizing what your needs are at a certain time, and also really understanding what the people around you might need as well. And there's no right or wrong in that regard. It's just really being in touch with where you are and where everybody else is around you.
Yeah, so being in touch. Also, what if there's a real conflict that's happening? Communication is challenging. What if communication is not happening or cannot happen right now because there's a high level of stress and an emotional barrier? What can people do if their partner or the people that they're living with are just not interested in communicating?
Sure. So there's a couple different things. First of all, if there is conflict, it's really important to understand that when we get emotionally overwhelmed or triggered in some way, there's a part of our brain that kind of stops working in the way that it's supposed to, and it keeps us from being able to think clearly. We've heard that saying, like, I couldn't think straight. Well, you literally can't think straight when you are flooded emotionally. And so when you are having that experience, it's really important to take a break, to be able to say, you know what, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I need a break. And maybe it's just, 2 minutes of going off in another room and just taking a few deep breaths. Or maybe it's needing to go for a walk for an hour, or listen to music, or go talk to somebody else to kind of work it out before you come back. It's really important, though, to be able to come back to that conversation. But I think that it can be helpful with your partner to have a conversation with them about this when you're not in conflict. It's kind of in advance to say, sometimes when we are arguing, I get overwhelmed, and you may also. And when that happens, one of us gets to say break time, and we take a break, and then we'll come back to it when we're both calmer and we can have a more reasonable conversation. So it's really important to understand that process. That happens for everybody. That's just the way that we're wired. So it's really important to understand that. The other thing is, again, sometimes it can be helpful just to plan times to have conversations about things that might be more challenging in the relationships. And then thirdly, if you're really at a standstill in terms of not being able to talk at all or having a lot of conflict, there are a lot of therapists and coaches who are working virtually and can help people, both individually and couples. So that's another
great. Yeah, I was
option
going to
for
ask you
people.
about resources too. Tell us how to start a conversation, though. I mean, really get to the nitty gritty. What should you say to have the conversation, and where should you lead people? And you know, we understand taking a break. Is there something that we should not be talking about right now?
I don't know that there's anything necessarily off limits. I think it's really important, to your point, how you talk about things. And so if there's a difficult conversation that you need to have, I think, again, it's important to plan a time for that conversation when you're not going to be distracted by work or kids or other things that might be going on. So planning ahead, kind of a quieter time when you have no distraction, is the first thing. And then the second thing is, you know, to really use those I statements. You know, I'm feeling X, I'm concerned about Y. Paying attention to the language that you use. I talk a lot about mindset with my clients and in the work that I teach. And I'm really big on language. And I think that the words that we use with ourselves and with other people really matters. And so it's not uncommon when we're in conflict with somebody, you know, particularly a partner, to say like, you never do X, or, you know, you always do Y. And words like always and never are a conversation ender in some ways, because what they do is if you're saying that to someone else, it backs them into a corner. And their reaction is either going to be to fight or to flee. And it doesn't leave any room for pivoting. Few things in life are that absolute. And so when you hear yourself use words like always or never, learn to be mindful of that and to kind of catch yourself and to challenge yourself and say, okay, wait a minute, you know, maybe sometimes they do X. And it really, just changing words can actually change the whole tone of a conversation. So that's just one example. And same with the should word. You know, should word just carries a lot of judgment and criticism with it, and it doesn't really help you or the other person. So paying attention to the language that you use can open up the conversation in a totally different way. And the other thing is to remember that you're on the same team, you know, that it's not about winning the argument, it's about coming to some resolution. And when you can do that together, you're going to feel more connected and stronger as a couple. So if you get in your head, like, I want to win this argument, you're really sabotaging yourself and the relationship in that regard.
Those are great reminders. What are some resources that we can read? You mentioned reaching out to therapists who are doing online virtual coaching right now and conversations. What other, are there books? Are there resources online, YouTube videos?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of really great things out there for, you know, couples who are wanting to work on their relationship. Esther Perel is actually a really great resource. She does a lot of, she's written a bunch of books. There's a lot of videos and so forth. You can find her online. For people who are single and dating, it's one of my specialties and one of the things I love to talk about. And I've been doing webinars on that, and I'd love for anybody who's single to follow up with me about that. And for people who are going through or thinking about divorce, the program Jen mentioned that I'm a part of, called Vesta, we provide predominantly free webinars, education and support and resources to people in a more comprehensive way to help people get through the process with more peace of mind. And even during this time, if you are in a situation where you're thinking about or going through divorce, there are things that you can still do to help move that process forward. And it's just really important to get education about that.
I want to hear a prediction from you. Do you predict that relationships are going to be going through more divorce, or do you think relationships are going to get stronger through this?
Yeah, so yes and yes is actually my response. I hear a lot of talk that the divorce rate is going to go up, and I think lots of relationships are going to get stronger. So I think we're going to see both, actually, and I think it really depends on where people were in some ways when this all started and what they're willing to do during this time to try to do things differently. And for couples who were maybe already struggling, this time is going to be more difficult for them. And they're going to need to get some help, I think, to navigate it and come out the other side in a better way.
That makes sense. And we're going to open it up to questions here in just a minute. Before we do, though, I just want to mention that there are resources for people that feel unsafe in their home. Make sure that you reach out. If you don't know about those resources, we're happy to connect you with a local provider of support within your local community. So any comment on that, Susan?
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because there's so much concern for people who are in abusive situations, both adults and children, and of course the risk for domestic violence has gone up during this time. Reports have gone down, and it's not accurate. It's just that the people who usually report these things and have access to them is more limited. And so I really encourage people to watch out for each other. If there's anybody that you know who may be in a dangerous situation, to find ways to check in with them. There are different things on Facebook, posts that people are using, kind of code words that people can use. So take a look at that. And if you're in that situation yourself, just know that even during this time, there are resources that can help you. And I'd be happy to also connect you with them.
That's great. Thank you, Susan. All right, at this time, we are going to open it up to questions. If you have any questions right now, or even comments or some strategies that you are using to grow relationships, we would love to hear them. So I'm going to ask that anyone that wants to do so, if you would go down to the bottom of your screen and either click the thumbs up or clapping icon, I will come directly to you and unmute you. It'll ask your question, make your comment, and then we'll move on to the next attendee. All right. Anyone want to jump in on this? This is such a fun topic, but also, you know what? You can say, I read about it online. It's not happening to me. Robin, we're going to come to you. Go ahead, Robin.
Oh, no, I'm not. Okay. Yeah, I'll jump in. So one of the things I've been doing from a relationship standpoint that I sort of took from another boost that we had, which was focused around, around gratitude and around like your mindset and happiness. And, people have heard about gratitude journals and that whole thing. And she talked about like 3 good things, right? So I've started doing it with my husband every night, and he generally laughs at me. Like he still is like, you're going to make me do this every night, right? Like, are we done with this yet? But it's been like, I think it actually has like improved our relationship because it makes you think differently. So it sort of has that tie-in. And while I won't say he's totally bought in, it's a work in progress. And I'm finding that sort of has that carryover from retraining your mind to think positively, but it's also been helpful for our relationship.
That's great.
I love that, actually. I mean, gratitude, there's all this research about gratitude and how it can improve our mood when we identify things that we can be grateful about. So the practice of gratitude is powerful. And then the fact that you're doing it together creates this new ritual that brings you closer together, that provides a deeper connection. So finding, for the two of you, I mean, gratitude practices are fabulous. But for any couples, finding new rituals that you can do that will help you feel more connected just by virtue of doing them together on a regular basis is fantastic. So kudos to you for doing that, and for him for going along with it, even if he hasn't totally bought into it.
Yeah, he's kicking and screaming, but I'm sure that he sees the benefit as well, Robin. All right, Lynn, I'm going to come to you. I saw that you had a thumbs up.
Add on to that, I belong to a Facebook group called Randolph Ladies Room, and it's just for women to get together and have a little private space to talk about things we care about that men might not want to be, or you might not want to share broadly on Facebook. And what they have is every Friday, one of the admins of that group says, Yeah, it's been a rough week, but what's one thing that went really well for you this week? And that's just been a nice touch base every Friday to see that question on Facebook as I go through everything else and to think, wow, yeah, it was a crummy week. It was awful, but here's one thing or here's two things. And I find that, really focusing on the small, almost minute things right now is really what's helping me cope with the situation,
That's
going
good.
out in my yard, taking photos of my spring garden. You can see the myrtle behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of thing. Just, yeah.
Yeah, that's such an important point, actually, Lynn, and I'm glad that you brought that up. There's so much in this situation that we can't control, and in general in life, like we can't control, this pandemic. We certainly can't control or change other people and circumstances sometimes. And so it becomes really important to acknowledge the feelings around whatever's going on and also focus on what you do have control over. Our power isn't in trying to change other people or even circumstances sometimes. It's actually in choosing how we respond to whatever is in front of us. That's where your power is. No matter what is going on, whatever somebody's doing or whatever the situation is, how you choose to respond to it is where your power is. And when we can stay focused on that and identify those things that are going well, it can really help to make us feel so much better in where we are, and that then can carry over into our relationships as well. And I would add, along with that, taking care of ourselves. Also, self-care is, kind of a buzzword out there in general, and it's such an important thing. The more that we are doing to take care of ourselves in all different ways, the more we're able to kind of show up in our relationships and to better manage everything that's going on around us. So I just wanted to add that piece as well.
And to your point, Susan, and to Lynn's point, it doesn't have to be big things.
Right.
You don't have to put a mask on for 15 minutes and think that you just took care of yourself, right? You can do very small things that are, that make a big difference.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, people kind of joke, but, taking a shower might be, your big win for the day or the week. Brushing your teeth, Jen's miming there. You're right. It doesn't have to be anything big. It's really just identifying those things that have gone well or that you were able to accomplish. And it can be as tiny as anything.
Okay, someone else want to jump in, give us an idea? I really love the dating piece, dating the person that you're with, at home with, but also dating, virtually. Anyone want to share some strategies on that? No.
I'll talk about it. I have all kinds of clients and having great success. When this first happened and I shared with some clients, that I actually in some ways think the situation can help them. One of my clients said, you're crazy. That was her first response to me. And now she's been virtually dating somebody and really creating this great connection with them through their virtual dates and all their communication by phone and text as well. And so she's kind of my poster child for how to do this right. In dating, people tend to rush the process, and rushing the process actually, I think, ends up backfiring a lot of times when people are dating. And so again, as I said before, the fact that this slows things down really provides an opportunity for people to get to know each other in a different way and a deeper way. And I think that can set them up for more success for when they're able to meet in person. So I'm really excited. And there's no greater time than now to be online. If you're single and dating, membership has spiked by about 30%. And, it's really all about how you approach it, how you present yourself, how you assess other people, and how you navigate the process.
That's great. B, I saw your hand up. I'm going to come to you and unmute you. Did you have a question?
Susan never mentioned at all your faith, your religion, your practice of religion during this time, because I think without my religion, I could not get through this.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it is. It's such an important thing. And for a lot of people, faith is what provides that strength for them. I think what's important too is to really know what provides the greatest strength for you. And for some it is, and like for you, it is faith. And it's such an important thing. For others, maybe other things as well. And it's really just understanding and knowing what your needs are and what's going to provide you that comfort and strength to get through a situation like this. I'm glad that you have that.
All right. Anyone else want to give a shout out to what they're doing, or any question about how to improve a relationship? You did talk about growth. You know, what are some other strategies maybe that you can share for growing relationships within the home or outside of the home?
Yeah, you know, one thing I was just thinking about that I didn't really mention before is that, you know, sometimes people struggle with the differences between them and their partner, and really want the other person to become more like them, and see that is the only solution. And what I would encourage people to think about is that differences between you are not inherently bad. What's important is how you negotiate those differences, and that's the part to really focus on. You know, it's actually usually good that we're different, and you know, because that's what challenges us and helps us to grow and introduces us to new ways of thinking or being. But how you navigate those differences is the part, again, that's really important, and being able to communicate in the ways that we talked about earlier can really help you in that process. So I just wanted to also share about that as well, because I know, especially being together all as much as you are, you're probably even more aware of the ways that you're different. And sometimes that can feel challenging to people. So think about how you can negotiate those, and maybe even think about what are the good things about the ways that your partner is different. You know, on the surface, it might just feel like total frustration on your part. But if you can identify even one or two things that are positive about how they might do things differently, it might help you in terms of your own mindset about it, approach it in a different way.
Perfect. That goes back to your point of compassion, I think, having compassion with yourself, but also compassion for the other person. And you mentioned something that really resonated with me, that we talk about a lot in our home, that one thing doesn't negate the entire body of work that you've put into your relationship. And I'm still working on that, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, a couple thoughts too, you know, as we're getting ready to finish up, you know, first of all, this is hard, and it's really important to acknowledge that this is really hard for everybody. And it's okay to have all those different feelings that aren't all positive and wonderful. The important thing though is you don't want to get stuck there. You don't want to get stuck in all the sadness or frustration or anger about the situation, whether it's this pandemic or any other situation that you're in. So it's important to acknowledge whatever the hard parts are, and also pay attention to what you can do to feel better or to make things different and move in a different direction. And I specifically use the word "and" there, Jen, because to the point that you were making about the situation, we often will say like, oh, you know, this happened, but I want this to happen. And the word "but" in there is actually what can diminish or negate what comes before it. And so it's just another piece of language that you can pay attention to. You know, you can say, you know, this is really hard, and I'm learning new things about myself or my partner or whatever it is. And it just allows us to experience everything more fully and not to negate or diminish any one piece of what we're feeling or what the situation is. And that's part of what helps us process things and move forward and grow.
That's great. And Coach D just chatted here. We all deserve the same respect, space, and time as each other. I love that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, we are going to wrap up for the day, but we hope that you'll come back next week, because we will be here on Wednesday and Friday. We've got some exciting new boosts, 30 minutes of a bright spot in your day. We hope these are helpful. we're grateful that you are here today. And thank you, Dr. Trotter, for sharing your brilliance with us. We are really grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to be here, and I so appreciate all of your time and attention. So thank you so much, and feel free to reach out if I can be helpful to anybody. I'm happy to talk with you at any time. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye,
weekend.
everybody.